Academic nightmare. Academia has long harbored angst against history's great script, what Westerners call the Bible, a title I rarely use because that title regulates the good book to one or two religions. I call it the script to reflect its role as humanity's foundational narrative, unbound by any religion's supposed monopoly. Secular education also wants to confine this great book, but that is becoming impossible as we learn that this text is the basis for countless religions, faiths, and cultures. It transcends religions and is far more international than academia cares to admit. The script itself has countless unique names among indigenous tribes and Eastern religions: the Golden Book of the Altai people, the Lost Book of Southeast Asian hill tribes, the Many-Book Book or Char Kiteb of Kyrgyz, the Script Book or Lo Kitab of Assam's Makir tribes, and many similar names. Unfortunately, in line with academic bias, scholars fawn over a theory spun by the renowned Carl Jung. His collective unconscious theory paints a phenomenon weaving seemingly unrelated cultures together via a shared soul from which we draw our similar mythologies, faiths, and universal archetypes. Like a flood, an exodus, or an old woman giving birth to a hero. These are common themes in the script and in very diverse cultures. Jung seeks to understand where these commonalities come from. He acknowledges what he calls a shared psychological inheritance, but doesn't attribute these archetypes to a common history. Other philosophies, like theosophy, double down with its collective conscious theory, a supposed holding place for all of humanity's universal events. These theories aim to explain the intricate grid of interconnected legends. We're told the similarities between folk faiths exist because those stories were unconsciously pulled from some common, esoteric pool. Jung's shared soul and theosophy's cosmic pool falter under scrutiny. If archetypes like floods or virgin births span cultures, why invent an unconscious ether when genetics, e.g. National Geographic's Genographic Project, and migration patterns trace us to a single origin, mirroring the script's account? As we pull the camera from the human genome to archaeology and history, we see that human history also aligns with the great narrative. Future videos will address the role of the Phoenicians, Persians, Scythians, and others in this historic live-action fulfillment. Of course, history also highlights humanity's propensity to go off script, attempt to change the narrative, and fight against the author. We have deviated and developed a million versions of our own interpretations, but none of this changes humanity's foundational story, which is even written in the stars. According to scholars like Francis Rolleston, Joseph A. Seiss, E. W. Bullinger, Henry M. Morris, and many others, the good book's central message is found in the names of the stars and in the formation of the universe's constellations, which humanity has been observing for millennia. For instance, Francis Rolleston's Mazzaroth shows Virgo as the virgin birth, a motif echoed in tribal legends worldwide, suggesting the stars predate and reinforce the script's story. Joseph A. Seiss, in The Gospel in the Stars, traces Scorpio's sting to Satan's defeat and Aries' ram to a sacrificial savior, images mirrored in the script's books of Genesis and Leviticus. These celestial signs, visible to every tribe from the Altai to the Americas, suggest a narrative sewn into the sky long before parchment, thus resonating with the script's oral roots across cultures. Many other constellations concur. In other words, as we pull the camera further back from Earth, the constellations emerge as their own celestial script, echoing the terrestrial one. Amazing. Genetics, history, and the stars all align with heaven's script. Sadly, we separated ourselves from this crucial narrative, and early migrations have slowly separated us from one another. Today, we are divided, offended, hurt, and angry. Thankfully, we can retrace our migrations. Countless historical movements, if mapped, reveal a network of humanity around the planet which explains our commonalities in faith, arts, writing, architecture, etc. Academics who prefer cosmic pools of archetypical information from which we unknowingly pluck common beliefs may have abandoned reality for a flimsy fairy tale. The script's account of one nation, its unique calling, and eventual journey to all nations is foundational to understanding human history, cultural anthropology, and the phenomenon of countless nations retracing their roots to Israel. Not to Egyptians, Igbo, Phoenicians, Persians, Greeks, or Mayans, but to script's heirloom DNA. Nations are finding their origins in Israel. We measure modern nations by this template, as we track Israel's development through stages of growth, rebellion, and crisis. We reflect on God's work in other nations. As we read about Israel's journey, stark warnings ring out. Destruction and dispersion await if the nation turns from its roots. The plot thickens when the warning goes unheeded. Divine admonitions are not empty words. Israel's 12-tribe confederation fractures in civil war, and 10 of its tribes are scattered among the nations. The prophet Hosea rightly predicted, "My God will cast them off, since they did not listen to him. So they will become wanderers among the nations." Hosea 9:17. And Moses proclaimed, "The Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be reduced to a few survivors among the nations where the Lord your God will drive you." Deuteronomy 4:27. Those scattered people became the lost tribes of Israel and eventually forgot who they were. But here's where it gets intriguing. The word scatter in Hebrew can also translate as sown. That changes the picture. The camera again pulls back from the lostness of Israel's tribes to a global perspective of God sowing Israelite seeds among Earth's many peoples. The nations are fields, and the one sowing has a purpose, a harvest that he envisions. The seed's heirloom DNA contains the script's Torah stories, culture, beliefs, laws, architecture, arts, literature, and worldview. Israel's history, with brave and wise leaders like Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, Joshua, David, and Solomon, is also in the sown seeds. That's why many of the Asians, like the Mizo, Kuki, and Mikir tribes that Lost Tribes Institute works with, have stories of a Red Sea crossing. Chiangmin, Mikir, and many Native American tribes also have a priesthood similar to that depicted in the script. Hinduism's Vedas mention a monotheistic origin and gods, Brahma and Saraswati, matching the script's Abraham and Sarah. Mikir of Assam call their lost book the Lo Kitab, and their priesthood mirrors Leviticus with animal sacrifices, a priestly clan, a high priest, and much more. The script's seeds obviously didn't vanish. They germinated among the nations. God's heirloom seeds were not genetically modified copies. Typical of heirloom seeds, the next generation didn't replicate each other, but diversified with each generation, while simultaneously forming an underground network of interwoven legends, traditions, and cultures spanning the globe. Classical antiquity, the Olmec or pre-Mayan civilization, Vedic writings, Eastern religions, Greek philosophy, world epics, and a preponderance of literature, architecture, city-states, and faiths. These and more sprouted worldwide as the scattered tribes landed and rooted themselves among the nations. Some nations, like the Hutta of Japan, the Kuki of Nagaland, the Navajo of Southwest America, and Black Americans of Igbo and Yoruba descent, traveled for centuries, making many places home before settling in their present homeland. Did the script's author intend this? Are the nations structured to one day return to humanity's original story as they return to their own roots? Could that original story be what academia gropes for in its collective memory? God's promise fuels the question. It will no longer be said, "As the Lord lives who brought the Israelites from the land of Egypt," but rather, "As the Lord lives who brought the Israelites from the north and from all the other lands where he had banished them. For I will return them to their land that I gave to their ancestors." Jeremiah 16:14-15. If true, the nations will soon be gathered to and around the Jewish state. God's unprecedented diversity will be on display as God's lost children return from all nations. There is only one force that can unite such diverse tribes: love. The returning tribes will prioritize love. Love and forgiveness will hold all these splintered nations together. Remember, the Lord who brought his people from Egypt made history. But the predicted future homecoming will be far more encompassing, a gathering of nations and tribes, culminating in international peace. So why trust academia's esoteric pool of symbols? History stands on the script. Humanity's unity depends on reclaiming it.